So moving on from that into group learning. In general, students want to collaborate, and they do collaborate. They collaborate in and out of PBL sessions, they collaborate on and offline, and they collaborate on and off campus. In general, students don't want organized, pre-organized group learning. In other words, they don't want the composition of their group determined for them, and they believe that they can study far more efficiently on their own. So there's massive frustration in that pre-organized group setting where the pace of the group is set by students that are either too weak or too strong. And I think this quote describes that quite nicely. Currently, many groups are dysfunctional because people are very far apart in terms of competence. And so, an entire session of PBL could be spent revising the most basic cardiac physiology that any self-respecting first year would know, instead of talking about clinical correlates and detailed pathophysiological changes and how they affect patient presentation. And another quote, why waste an afternoon in PBL letting half the group play catch up and half the group fall asleep? Powerful words. Thumbs down, as I mentioned earlier, for predetermined group composition, and they believe that as a result of that, poor dynamics within a group have a massive influence on the functioning and the success of the group. And they believe that particularly variations in discipline and dedication inhibit group performance. Sometimes a group does not gel, said by one student. And they value a facilitator competency, which is again a point that comes up over and over again, because they believe that the facilitator should direct and focus the discussion and, importantly, contribute appropriate knowledge at the relevant time. Group size, interestingly, also very important. Students prefer smaller, more intimate groups. Students do value group learning for epistemological diversity. In other words, increasing academically at risk or weaker students to knowledge of stronger students, giving them access to the knowledge of stronger students and increasing their breadth of knowledge. A quote here, I enjoy group work when you get to aggregate the knowledge of the group and everyone brings a different perspective to the problem. So there's a thumbs up. Students do recognize the importance of cultural and social diversity in a group, but they want flexibility on the group composition and the time and place that that group should meet. I found this very interesting, as students want to belong to multiple groups, because if you're in a single group for an extended period of time, you're only going to get exposed to the knowledge of those students. Whereas if you could belong to multiple groups, there's multiple people's knowledge that you are going to be exposed to. Task splitting and task sharing is quite an interesting finding. Task splitting is where there's a set of tasks and they divide it up amongst the different students in the group. So there's a set of learning objectives, some students do some learning objectives, others do other learning objectives, versus task sharing where all students do all learning objectives. Clearly task splitting was valued as being more efficient, but conversely task sharing meant that each student constructed knowledge on each learning objective. So students value collaboration, they value group learning, and they value it for receiving knowledge or having knowledge demonstrated to them. They value it for discussion, they value it for being able to ask questions and have them answered, and they value it for peer benchmarking and learning resource collation purposes. Just to close the findings on group learning, collaboration in group learning is confidence dependent, and confidence is knowledge dependent. The more knowledge a student has, the more confident they will be and the more they will collaborate.